joining us. So today we are going to have our first health equity research panel discussion and research presentation by our 3 awardees from last year's MICCAI Health Equity Paper Award. And before we get started, I would first like to briefly introduce WiM. If you always attend our WiM webinars, I think you have heard of it. But I just want to emphasize that WiM is a community that is growing fast and also welcomes everyone. And we're not only trying to welcome women, we welcome people from all backgrounds, all gender, to support and promote minorities and women researchers. And also we want to build a community through Slack, which is a virtual community, so that we can talk about promote our own research and also build connections and relationships. So if you have not yet joined our Slack, we will have the Slack QR code in the end of the talk that you can scan, or you should have already received the message, the emails from the MICCAI board. And in the past year, we have one event with very nicely designed gifts and 7 panelists and 2 awards. And this year, we'll also have our WiM launching event as well as the awards. So please make sure that you keep an eye on them. And furthermore, we also have those excellent moments, memorable moments in our last year's WiM. And I do hope to see more faces who attend the webinar today and also the past and future WiM events to also become part of us. And those are the awardees for our Best Oral Presentation Award and Health Equity Awards. And we already had 2 successful webinars. Last year, we had our first in June on the good robot. And then in December, we have Dr. Maria Zuluga building trustworthiness through robustness. So I think this is already, this was very well received. And today we'll have our first Best Health Equity Paper Winners discussion, where we can talk about health equity and fairness research in MICCAI, which is a very important topic. And we also provided childcare service together with MICCAI organization in the past with MICCAI, and hopefully we can provide more service to serve everyone. And furthermore, now we have 5 new board members elected last year, and we have in total about 12 members. So this year, we are actually going to have a new election for a new, I think the past year's 5 board members will stay, but we are going to update our whole board. So if you are interested in joining WiM, don't hesitate. We'll have the announcement very soon in about March or April, and then you can start to apply. And we'll have the selection process in the summer. Okay, without further ado, I will let Wina take the stage.
Thanks for your introduction. I'm Wena. I'm a public outreach officer of Women in MICCAI. So I'm very glad to open this webinar, how to conduct health equity research with our best health paper equity awardees. So we'll first open by introduce each of the speaker, and they will present their best paper for 10 minutes each. And then we'll open the panel discussion and also open the floor to receive Q&A from the audiences. So that's the schedule for today. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Nohan Bayesi. She is a PhD candidate and a Winnie Scholar at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, Canada, specialized in AI for medical imaging. Her research advances continual learning and domain generalization to enhance healthcare applications of deep learning. Nohan holds master's and bachelor's degree in electronic and computer engineering from Khalifa University in the UAE and brings a blend of academic and industry experience, having worked as a lecturer, a lab engineer, and machine learning engineer. So without further ado, let's welcome Nohan to give us the talk on her paper. Welcome.
Thank you, Weina. Okay, okay. I just sent a request to share my screen. Okay, I can do it now. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Hi everyone, thank you so much for coming here today. My name is Noor and I am a graduate student at the University of British Columbia in Canada. So I'm very honored and happy today to be presenting our recent work by Spruner, de-biased continual learning for medical image classification. So let's start by this scenario. Let's imagine that we have a physician or a doctor who keeps on forgetting all patient information every time he learns a new one. This is so problematic, right? Unfortunately, this is the case in continual learning because this is the case in deep networks because deep networks suffer from catastrophic forgetting. So the network, because of the optimization process and how the network learns and update the parameters, it tends to forget the knowledge it has learned before when learning a new task.
Noha, do you mind change to the presentation view because now we see the speaker view?
Okay, sure. Okay. Okay. Okay, so yeah, so the networks tend to forget the previous knowledge when learning a new one. Now, in medical imaging, this is even more complicated because, you know, we have data coming from different diseases, different hospitals, different demographics, different devices over time. And we want to make sure that our network does not forget this information every time it learns a new one. So to avoid catastrophic forgetting, we have this field which is called continual learning. It allows the network to learn sequentially over time, one task after the other, and without forgetting. And by the end of the learning process, the network would be able to learn or to perform well on all the tasks it has seen so far. So what is missing in continual learning? So most of the existing continual learning techniques focus on avoiding catastrophic forgetting. But here's the question. Is catastrophic forgetting the only challenge we need to consider in a continual learning setup? So here is the point. In continual learning, there is a missing point, which is the bias. So sometimes, for example, patients from different racial groups may receive different access to healthcare. And because of this, the data that we use at the end of the day to train the network with might end up being biased towards a specific subgroup. And because of this, if we train the network on this biased data set, the network might end up learning some unrelated features that are not related to the disease itself, but other features, other irrelevant features. And because of this, the network will be basically unfair and it will fail to generalize to the other subgroups that were not part of the training. So let's now go back to our continual learning scenario. Why bias in continual learning is even more complicated? Because let's say at one time we have a biased data set and the network is going to pick up this bias. And because of this, in the future, if the network is going to learn another task, so even if this task was unbiased and everything was perfect, because of the bias that the network has picked up in the early stage, it's going to affect learning the future task. And this is what we call the bias transfer. So if we take a moment and we think about the disastrous scenario, if we have a long sequence of tasks to learn, and if we end up with having multiple biases, so that's why even things are going to be more complicated. So here is our motivation. So people were thinking about forgetting as a bad thing. So in our work, we started to think, can we make this forgetting something useful? So instead of avoiding forgetting, can we actually intentionally forget the units in the network that are responsible for the bias decision? Because in this case, the network will use this forgetting towards being more fair, right? And this is exactly what bias pruner is about. It's a continual learning method that leverages forgetting to improve fairness. So the idea behind bias pruner is that we are going basically to assign a subnetwork within our network to each of the tasks that we're going to see over time. So here we have 2 points. One point is that we are avoiding forgetting because we have this dedicated subnetwork for each task independently, so there is no knowledge interference, so there is no forgetting. And on the other hand, this subnetwork is unique because it is a de-biased subnetwork. So again, we're not worried about the bias transfer issue. So how to do this? The way to do this and to find this de-biased subnetwork is by doing network pruning based on the unit bias score. So the bias score is nothing but a measure to the contribution of each unit in the network towards learning these bias decision. So if we want to find our de-biased subnetwork, we have to do a few steps. The first one is to measure the bias score for each unit, as I said. Now, the idea here is that usually networks tend to learn from the easy features and the easy samples more than the hard samples. And this is exactly what we did. So we started by encouraging the network to be biased. So we wanted to push this network to go into that direction and to learn the bias. And to do this, we use this generalized cross entropy loss, which actually amplifies learning from the easy samples. And once the network is biased, for each class, we're going to find the easy samples and the hard samples. So the easy samples are those that were correctly classified by this biased network, and the hard samples are those that were wrongly classified by the biased network. After that, we're going to apply this equation to find the bias score. So this equation actually look at the response of each unit to the easy samples and the hard samples. So by taking the difference, we are finding the bias score. So here, the units that have higher bias score have higher value. So once we do this, and once we find all the bias scores for all the units in the network, we are going to sort these units out, and we're going to prune the units with the highest bias scores, and we end up with our subnetwork. And the final step in this case would be to fine-tune the subnetwork with a weighted cross entropy loss, such that we're giving lower importance to the easy samples and higher importance to the hard samples that were detected by the bias network. And this is how we get our de-biased subnetwork. And we keep on repeating the same step every time we learn a new task. Now, to evaluate bias pruner, we conducted multiple experiments on multiple benchmarks, but in this, for the sake of this presentation, I'm focusing on one task, which is the Fitzpatrick, which is a very well-known data set for skin lesion analysis. It contains 16,000 clinical images spanning 114 classes. Now, each of these images is assigned to a Fitzpatrick skin type, which basically represent the skin tone. So we have from the very fair skin tone to the dark brown skin tone. But note here that this information is not used in our training at all. So our method is totally unsupervised. We are assuming that we know nothing about the bias, and we let the network learn it by itself, which is even more practical. However, we use this information for the evaluation purposes. And for the continual learning setup, we implemented a class incremental learning. So class incremental learning means that we take these 114 classes and we split them into 6 tasks. Each task has 19 classes that are disjoint. So we are assuming that we learn each of these 19 classes one at a time in a sequential manner. And as you can see here, at the end of the learning, we would end up with 6 different subnetworks for the 6 different tasks that we have. Now, to compare this with the conventional scenarios, so we have 3 baselines. The first one is the joint. So in the joint learning, which is basically the conventional learning, so we are assuming the ideal scenario where we have all the 114 classes at the same time, and we have one network, which is trained on these 114 classes. So this is kind of like an upper bound performance. The second upper bound performance is the single training. So here, this is similar to the continual learning. So we do have 6 different tasks, just like the continual learning. But here we are dedicating one separate network for each individual task. So we have 6 tasks, 6 networks. But again, here we're also assuming that all the information that we need, which is the 114 classes, are available in one time. And the final baseline is the lower bound performance, which is the sequential fine-tuning. This is similar to the continual learning method, to our method, bias pruner. So here we have one network, and we learn one task after the other. But here we are not giving any consideration to forgetting. So we do expect the performance to be so bad, especially after learning all the 6 tasks, because of the forgetting. And here, let me just give you an overview about the bias distribution across these tasks. So we see that we do have imbalance in the skin types across the task. And this is the case also in a single class. So for example, if we look at the melanoma, we see that, for example, we have more images related to fair skin tones as compared to darker skin tones. So here are some of the classification performance results. So if we look at the overall accuracy, we can see that bias pruner is doing better than the baselines and the continual learning methods that we are comparing against, which is kind of expected. But the good point is the more interesting point would be to look at the fairness measure, because this is what we care about. And we did report multiple measures. One of them is the AOD, which basically assesses whether the network gives equal opportunity to different groups. So we want this value, the AOD, to be minimized, meaning that the performance is meaning that the network is fair. So if we look here at the fairness performance, we see that bias pruner has the lowest AOD values comparing to baselines and to continual learning methods, especially if we look at the sequential fine-tuning, which has a very high AOD value. And here you might ask yourself, okay, what about we bring any of the bias mitigation techniques, just like bias resampling, and we just add it to the existing continual learning methods. And this is what we did here. But here there are two things. First of all, we see that the performance is not as good as our bias pruner. And second point here, such techniques require the bias information to be available for training the network. So this is supervised techniques, whereas our method is unsupervised. So yeah, so this is a quick summary about bias pruner. So we presented I think a significant step towards addressing the challenge of bias in continual learning, and we do hope that this work inspires further research on fairness in continual learning. So thank you so much for attending the presentation. Yeah, I think if you have questions or maybe at the end, yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Noha, for your great presentation. I think we have a question from audience, Ramika, and the audience asks, you mentioned there are 6 tasks around slide 7. Would you mind share what kind of tasks these are?
Sorry, which slide?
Slide number 17, sorry.
Oh, 17, yeah. Yeah, so here the different task represents the so here we are trying to mimic a real life scenario of learning, so that we learn sequentially over time. So what we did is that we got this data set which has 114 classes, but we are assuming again to mimic the real life scenario that not all the information is available in one time. So what we did is that we splitted these 114 classes into 6 tasks. Like this is it's up to you, like you can just design the environment that you want. So in our case we did like 6 different tasks, and so each task will contain 19 classes and 19 separate classes. So we are assuming that these 114 classes are arriving one at a time. Each time we have 19 classes, and this is how we train the network. So we train the network on the first task, which is the first 19 classes, and the second task, and then the third task, and so on.
Oh, so I'm not sure if I get the idea. So basically you kind of randomly assign to each group, right?
Yes. So we randomly split the classes among the different tasks. Yeah.
Thanks for the answering. Okay. So maybe if you have audience has any other question, feel free to put in the Q&A box, and we can also leave in the panel discussion. I think maybe the audience also.
Yeah, I think we can move to the second speaker first and leave all the questions to the panel discussion and the final Q&A.
Okay.
So do you have, wait a minute. I'll share my screen for this one. Okay, cool. WiM.
Yeah, I'm very glad to introduce our second panelist. I'm not sure if I pronounced your name correctly. Kushilia Civil Yogaraj. Not sure if that's the correct pronunciation. Yeah, sorry if I pronounced it incorrectly. Kashelia, she earned her bachelor honors in biomedical engineering with first-class honors from the Department of Electronic and Telecommunication Engineering, University of Moratuwa, Sri Lanka in 2021. She's currently pursuing her master in the same department. Kaushiyala joined Synergy Technology Labs as a biomedical R&D engineer, where she focused on design of the biomedical devices and the development of related algorithms. Her research interest lies in the field of medical image and signal processing. So without further ado, let's welcome Kashiala. Welcome.
Hi, Vainaji. Thank you. Okay. I hope you can see my screen.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kaushalya Sivayogaraj. I'm here to present my research paper, liver ultrasound reconstruction, automatic 3D reconstruction, and volumetry of liver with a few partial ultrasound scans. Our paper was selected as a top 3 finalist in Women in MICCAI under the category of health equity in the AI era. Liver volume estimation is an essential clinical indicator of pathological disease diagnosis of hepatic diseases such as liver tumor, liver cirrhosis, hepatocellular carcinoma, fatty liver disease, and obstruction of bile duct. Liver volumetry plays a vital role in surgical planning, especially for liver transplantation and hepatic resections. Prior to major liver surgeries, it is crucial to assess the liver's functional reserve and volume. CT and MRI medical imaging modalities can be used to estimate liver volume of a patient by various liver volume calculation method. Since in this study, we are focusing on liver volumetry with ultrasound images. Ultrasound, as one of the most used low-cost imaging modality, has been recognized as a powerful screening and diagnostic tool for radiologists. However, ultrasound also presents unique challenges such as low imaging quality caused by noise and artifacts, high dependence on abundant operator, and high inter and intra-observer variability across different manufacturers' ultrasound systems. To address these challenges, it is essential to develop an accurate and intelligent automatic ultrasound image analysis method for ultrasound quantitative assessment. Nowadays, Child's method is used by radiologists to evaluate liver volume. I will give a very short introduction to Child's method for liver volume calculation from ultrasound images. So, image 1 represents the left lobe of the liver, and the image 2 represents the right lobe of the liver. From the left lobe of the liver, radiologists took some measurements. The first measurement is maximum anterior to posterior diameter of the liver, and the second one is the length from dome to tip of the right lobe of the liver, and the maximum anterior to posterior diameter of the liver. So these three measurements are obtained from these two, the right lobe and the left lobe of the liver. And those three measurements are used to train a linear regression model. And they finally figured out this equation gives a more accurate liver volume from ultrasound images. So they use these three measurements in these equations and they will calculate the liver volume. So this is the method right now used by radiologists to calculate the liver volume. So deep neural models have shown application in varied image segmentation tasks due to the achievements and high performance of the deep learning strategies. The the fully convolution network is the firstly introduced network for biomedical image segmentation. Since this FCN does not consider the global context information efficiently, and FCN results in low resolution predictions with fuzziness in object boundaries. The second very famous network for biomedical image segmentation is UNet. However, the image size is limited in UNet, and it does not have a good generalization ability when the convolution layers increases. The third network we tested is the TransUnit network. TransUnit is a combination of transformer and unit network. It is a strong alternative for biomedical image segmentation. TransUnit achieves a superior performance than various competing methods. As a result of literature review on image segmentation, I can say that there were not well-known methods that solely focuses on liver segmentation from ultrasound images. Reconstructing a 3D object from its few 2D ultrasound images is along a standing task. The method in this slide can reconstruct 3D shape model from 2D medical images. The first figure represent the method called RX, method that will, since this method need more planar images to reconstruct the 3D organ model. The second method is called as implicit one. So in this method, they could generate a 3D shape model from few 2D images, since this method requires 2D 2D image acquisition coordinate as an input. The third method is represent the slice mask based 3D cardiac shape reconstruction from CT volume method. The method elevates the shortage of training data by sampling in the constructed parameter latent space and increasing the network generation performance. The method could reconstruct the shape from few 2D images. So when we list down our contribution, so this contribution is we did a 3D liver reconstruction and volume estimation using 3 ultrasound images acquired from midline, mid-clavicular line, and anterior axillary line of the sagittal plane, where the liver is partially visible. And so our another contribution is a database of paired ultrasound scans and radiologist annotated CT scans that comprises 134 such scans. And our method surpassing the volume computation accuracy obtained by radiologists using the Child's method on ultrasound images. So our data set, it's a unique data set. For this study, we collected data from hospitals. So our ultrasound image annotations are done by radiologists under supervision of consultant radiologist. 2D sagittal plane images of a patient are annotated. So midline, mid-clavicular line, and anterior axillary line images are annotated. These 3 images are selected. By the radiologist, because these 3 planes are very easily accessible. And our data set contains sequence of CG images of abdomen, and in those liver, right kidney, left kidney are segmented by consultant radiologist. So in our method, we are using statistical shape modeling. So the method that uses various shape models in a space, and that will generate the mean model and shape parameters. So here I included a small workflow of statistical shape modeling. The first step is fitting of shapes. So shapes corresponding to the individual medical images have an arbitrary orientation and position in the space. The first step of workflow is to non-rigidly register or fit one of our segmentations to other segmentations. So thereby representing all our segmentation by corresponding measures. The second step of the workflow is alignment of shapes. So in this, we rigidly align the fitted measures to remove rotational and translational errors. The third step, we are doing a principal component analysis on the aligned meshes to generate our mean mesh and the principal component. So in this figure, you can see the final generated mean liver model. So the our proposed framework uses binary mask of 3 ultrasound images. Ultrasound slices generate the shape parameters through parametric regression MLP network. Uh, these wasp the statistical shape modeling to generate the 3D liver reconstruction. So you can see for different ultrasound slice input images, the 3 input images where we are generating the segmentation network generates the binary liver mask, and then the parametric regression MLP network uses the 3 binary segmentations and generate the 3D liver model. And finally, from the 3D liver reconstruction, we calculate the liver volumes. So you can see for each differences how that liver volume, the 3D view of the liver is changing. So this slide shows a 3D liver 3D liver model generated from our method. So for a particular 3 ultrasound sagittal plane 3 ultrasound images. So these are the liver models our method generates. So you can see the posterior and the anterior views of the generated 3D liver model. And yellow color one is the ground truth, and the green one is the predictions. And this one shows the absolute mean to absolute point to point difference. So you can see the error is very much minimal. So this shows the segmentation model and the reconstruction model accuracies. So the segment, when we tested our segmentation network plus with a different encoders and transunit network. So you can see transunit outperforms in our methodology. And when we compare the reconstruction accuracy, so we tested the transunit method and the reconstruction method with the combination and unit reconstruction network. So here the transunit and the reconstruction combinations outcomes with the method. When we did the statistical analysis, so we computed the liver volumes with the ground truth. So we used the ground truth liver volume as CT liver volumes. And first we compare the CT and the Child's method, the currently used liver volume calculation method, and we calculated the root mean square error. And we compared the CT volume and our liver volumes, and we calculated the root mean square error. So you can see from our method the root mean square error is very less. Then we plotted the box plot, and you can see our method calculate the liver volumes within the range of CT liver volumes and no outliers as well. Then we did some ablation studies. So we tested with a different image resolution. So you can see when the image resolution is increasing, absolutely the root mean square is reducing. So it depends on the resources. So then we increase the number of input images we checked. So we already have 3 images segmented. So we could test it with 2 images. So you can see when we increase the number of input images, absolutely the root mean square error is reducing. Then we tested with different principal component analysis used in statistical shape modeling. So we used 50 at first. So the number of principal components, how much we use depends on the number of input data we use. So when after we tested, we could see for different principal component how the root mean square varying is kind of arbitrarily it was varying. Then we tested the number of CT scan used in the statistical shape modeling. So we have 134 patients data. So we tested like first 50 and second 50, and we changed the number of input images. So right now we are using is 100. So we tested against different number of CT scans. And so thank you for listening. So code and paper are available at in this QR code. So if you are interested, you can visit and visit. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shana, for your great presentation. I think it's a meaningful research, especially in the low resource areas where maybe CT scan is not accessible. So we can use this method. So we have a question from this from Nohan about you mentioned you have this contribution of a new data set, and she's wondering if that data set is publicly available.
Yes, you can request in this GitHub link you can request. So there's the request how you should request the data. It is available there. You can look at that website.
It's great. So we can just
Thank
check project website. Thank you. All right. Maybe I think if you have no further question, we can invite our third panelist, WiM Dang. I'm not sure if I pronounced your name correctly. Please correct me.
Don't worry. Don't worry.
Okay. Yeah. When got done, she received her master in data science in 2020 at your conference. She's currently a fourth-year PhD student at the Department of Mathematics and Computer Science, University of Barcelona, Spain, under the supervision of Dr. Karim Lacadia and Dr. Geronimo Hernanzi Gonzali. Her PhD research focused on advancing fairness analysis in machine learning for healthcare, with specific interest in unfair bias mitigation and explainable AI. So welcome, WiM.
Thank you, Weina, for the introduction. I am going to share my screen. Can you see my full screen?
Yes.
Amazing. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Yving, and thank you for Women in MICCAI for inviting me. I'm going to talk today about our recent paper, how we can mitigate our diagnosis bias in CNN-based Alzheimer's disease diagnosis for the elderly. And this is joint work with the postdoc, Andrea, and my two supervisors, Professor Geronimo and Professor Karim. Let's get started with the problem statement. So diagnosing an Alzheimer's disease in the oldest population is challenging due to overlapping symptoms with normal cognitive aging, which complicates to differentiation between typical aging and early stage dementia. And image-based diagnosis also faces challenges due to the presence of multiple comorbidities, brain resilience, and age-related anatomical changes in elderly brains. Like consequently, AI models might exhibit a high rate of false positives, also known as the overdiagnosis rate. This increases the amount of work for radiologists and healthcare costs for patients. Therefore, our study aims to mitigate this overdiagnosis bias in CNN-based models to improve the model's fairness and reliability. So our approach, a post-processing debugging algorithm, RETAF, consists of like two main components, calibration and group-specific threshold optimization. First, we apply apply scaling to calibrate the predicted probability, ensuring they are more reliable. Next, we optimize the decision thresholds for the older age group through an optimization problem. So like our goal is to optimize threshold for each older age group to minimize false positive rates while keeping false negative rate acceptable. To achieve this, we define an optimization problem that minimize the absolute difference between its false positive rate and the overall false positive rate at the standard 0.5 threshold, subject to the condition that is like false positive rate do not like go beyond the overall false negative rate at the threshold 0.5. So imagine you have a trained model and a validation set along with this optimization. How do you solve it to obtain the optimal threshold tau? So in this study, we estimate the cumulative distribution function, CDF, of predicted probability for positive sample, AD, Alzheimer's disease, and negative sample, CN, like cognitive normal groups, within each older age group, like to calculate their false positive rate and for negative rates as shown in the slide. And we estimate these distributions by fitting like gamma, student T's, and normal distribution, and also using non-parametric approaches like such as kernel density estimation (KDE) and Gaussian mixture models. And the best fit is selected based on the highest likelihood. So we use the RT dataset, which includes T1 weighted MRI scan of AD, Alzheimer's disease, and CN cognitive normal individual categorized into 4 age group. As you can see in the slide, the dataset has the prevalence shift, meaning that a single threshold optimized for the entire population might not generalize well, like leading to disparate performance. So we use the pre-built 3D CNN model developed by Wentz and his colleague, like designed to diagnose Alzheimer's disease with 5 convolutional layers and 3 fully connected layers. This model is a widely recognized benchmark in AD classification. However, it suffers from poor calibration and a high overdiagnosis rate in older groups. So these issues make it an ideal candidate for testing the effectiveness of our proposed method. So the plots, this plot like illustrate the histogram and the CDF predicted probabilities for AD and CN sample, the positive and negative sample, segmented by all age and older age groups, 75 to 84 and 85 plus. The vertical lines represent different thresholds, 0.54 OH, and the optimized threshold of 0.65 and 0.68 for the 75 to 84 and 85 plus groups, respectively. As we can see, after applying the stellar threshold, like significantly reduce the false positive rates. As you can see here, like for the older age group, with those substantially like increasing the false negative rate. Yes, as you can see here. So the baseline model's calibration curve for the older age group are below. And you can see up below the diagonal, like indicating over forecasting and poor calibration. So the model like tended to predict higher probabilities than actual outcome, so leading to our diagnosis rate for the 75 to 84 age group. The baseline false positive rate yes were around 38%, and for 85 plus age group is were around 40%. So we then apply CPP, the calibrated equalized post-processing method, a commonly used technique in debiasing. However, CPP reduce the gap. Yeah, as you can see, it reduced the gap between the age groups by increasing the error in the younger one, so resulting in the well-known leveling down effect. In contrast, our method series-top significantly improve performance for the older age group. The calibration curves for this group, as you can see now, are much closer to diagonal, indicating better calibration, and the false positive rate for the 75 to 84 age group decrease by 11%, and for the 85 plus age group it decreased by 8%. So in conclusion, our method series-top effectively reduces our diagnosis bias in CNN-based AD diagnosis for the elderly. Future work, we aim to explore its performance in other demographic groups like biological sex and in other medical conditions, and also in another model architecture. Thank you so much for listening. And here is the QR code to lead to our code about our paper on GitHub. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Wayne, for sharing your research on mitigating the overdiagnosis. So for the audience, feel free to input your questions for all the three panelists in the Q&A. So I think we can start a brief panel discussion on how to conduct the health equity research in general. I think today we have a good coverage of different research topics on bias mitigation, like how to do risk contraction in the low resource area, and also how to mitigate like overdiagnosis biases. Thanks, panelists, again for your great talk and work. So I would like to maybe start with some question about your motivation to conduct health equity research. So what motivates you, or can you share some stories behind your research? How do you start to target this research topic? Maybe we can start from Lauren.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, so sure. So of course, like working on bias and fairness is a very hot topic. And because at the end of the day, we really want to make sure that our networks is capable to perform well on the different demographics and on all the people without like any biasing and without any issues. So so bias is really important. Now, in my case, honestly, I do not work on bias. So I work mainly on continual learning. This is what my PhD is about, on lifelong learning. But in one stage, you know, we were like working on some established data sets for continual learning. And at one stage, I was experimenting with one data set which we know that it's very biased, and then we started to see like some awkward like results and so on, and we started to investigate, oh, why is this the case? And when we started to debug and so on, we found out about the bias problem, which is transferred from one task to the other task. And I started to like read about it in the literature, and I found that it's maybe I remember at that time there was nothing about this problem, like the bias transfer in continual learning and its effect and how it's more complicated as studying the bias in an isolated environment at one time. So yeah, it motivated me to start working on it, and yeah, that's how it all started. And I'm happy, like I feel like even for now after PhD, I feel like I'm gonna work more on in this topic because I feel it's more interesting and very valuable to everyone, you know. So yeah,
Thanks, Noah, for sharing your story.
sure.
And how about Kashaya? You might share some backstage story about your research.
Yeah, Arjun, yeah, actually, in my research is is focuses on air volumetry from ultrasound images. So since ultrasound imaging, like it's a very low cost imaging modality, so it is yeah, like CT and MRI imaging modalities, those are very costly, and it's not available for all of the human beings, right? So it is because it's very costly. So for low and middle income countries, so it's very hard for them to do a CT and MRI scans. Even in Sri Lanka has failed, and all the hospitals also don't have the facility to do MRI and medical imaging modalities. So in this study, in our research, we focuses on ultrasound images because it's low cost and it's widely available for all of them. So in our countries like low and middle income countries, and for getting a data set, like it is a very huge task. So from our university, they actually supported, they contacted doctors, and they helped to collect data set for this research. And since we also still collecting data to improve our research as well, because like collecting data, it's also taking time. uh, yeah. And the and like and like kidney and liver, this kind of diseases also like spreading, and it's all over there. So calculating the liver volumetry from ultrasound imaging is very much useful. And even in compared to CT and MRI ultrasound imaging, we could get 2D images rather than the 3D views, because in CT and MRIs are continuous. In those imaging models, we are getting the continuous imaging slices, so it's very accurate and easy to get a 3D view of the organs. But in ultrasound images, those are we are getting in different image orientations. We are collecting only 2D images. So from 2D images, generating a volume, it's very much helpful, and it is helpful for all of the for all, because ultrasound images is very much accessible. Yeah. Uh, yes. Yeah. That's from my side. Like,
Thank you so much. Bengal, do you have any to add? Or we can skip to the next question too.
Maybe I can add on top of that. Like for me, like the process was so linear. Yes, it kind of my professor. When I just joined my PhD, my professor encouraged me to work on fairness, and so it just like and I just like my like growing like curiosity, like in understanding and addressing why AI solution like we develop at our lab like behave like differently across groups. And like my research is like motivated by real world problems, which such as like Alzheimer's disease, which I just presented. And another example is my PhD work for early cause protests, which we focus on depression. And because, diagnosis and treatment for this mental illness is stigmatized in certain ethnic communities. So there are a significant representation disparity between ethnicity, and there is also prevalent disparities based on biological sex as well, like with female diagnosed twice as often as male. So these disparity can lead to model that further amplify bias if we not address it. So yeah, that is kind of my work. Yeah.
Thank you so much. We have a question from the audience. Maybe Weina can read it.
Oh, yes. Yes, thanks for the audience question. So the audience asks, how can we encourage more rigorous validation in published models regarding bias and fairness? This means to be severely underreported in engineering papers, especially in dermatology where I work. Many papers don't even mention skin tones as variables, which undermines clinician confidence in the models.
The panelists want to answer this question?
Maybe I can answer and please you guys the rest free. I don't as on top of that like for me, I think that is a kind of like a combination of work of different like AI researcher, healthcare professional, and like for example, like for me, like for it for my article is my paper, I always encourage positive habit and open challenging on fairness for specific application. For me, I also open the goal for my work to reach a broader audience, and I also saw more and more journal paper. They kind of evaluation process. Okay, beside you report your model, your framework or general population, you have to take taking account report on sex, for example, sex, or for example for it's kind of, it really depends on medical context. For example, for your work, dermatology, so maybe skin tone more darker and light in more priority than gender, for example. So I think it's just kind of contribution and encourage, it's kind of responsible for each researcher. That's my answer.
Thank you so much. I agree. I think it's a very important question and awareness we should raise in the whole community, not only MICCAI, but the whole, I think, medical AI community, or even to the computer vision Europe's and all those machine learning community, because it's not only in medicine, healthcare, we need fairness dataset validation, but in anything about, for example, even like face recognition, and all those need fairness validation. Maybe some of the good ways is where we publish more data sets for different ethnic background, gender background, or population specific or diverse data sets. Actually, I have recently attended a webinar about, it's called the Women Bring House Project, which is organized by a group of people from Weill Cornell and, for example, UC Santa Cruz. And in that, actually, they are trying to build data sets, like the first data set for women neuroimaging. And this actually never exists before, but there are data sets for different ethnicity and for different age, like for the infant or for the adolescents. So I think those are the awareness we can raise through building those initiatives to create unique data sets for population-specific cohorts. Well, because of time, I know there might be more questions, and actually we have more panel discussion question prepared, but I think due to time, we won't have that discussed today, but anyone interested, please join our Slack channel, and you can always post your questions in our Slack channel, and then we'll invite our speakers and panelists today to answer the questions to follow up. And also, it's a virtual community. We can share about our research, and we will have post announcements about our events, as well as we can build up for each other and encourage each other's career and professional growth. So that's all for today, and thank you so much for your attendance. And we'll have our next webinar very soon in April, March. Please keep an eye on our announcements. And I think that's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
So
guys.
welcome to
Thank
end
you
the
so
webinar.
much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.